What's up, boys? Every like, every comment, and every subscriber gives me motivation daily to bringing you guys the best MMA content on YouTube. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to hit 400 subscribers before the summer. So let's do it. Okay, so I want to say about 4 or 5 months ago, I made a video on whether or not Khamzat Chimaev is overrated. And as you guys know, Khamzat Chimaev just came out an absolute barn burner with Gilbert Burns earlier tonight. One thing about it, man, he really showed his grit and he really showed his chin, to be honest, in this fight. So a lot of people were sleeping on Gilbert Burns, man, and talking about how crazy and how good Khamzat Chimaev is and really not giving Gilbert Burns the benefit of the doubt. Gilbert Burns proved to you guys why you should never sleep on skill. And I'm going to give an honest assessment of Khamzat Chimaev's skills in this video. I'm not going to get into a in-depth breakdown on what happened in the fight tonight. I'm going to save that for the podcast tomorrow. But I just want to sit here and talk about Khamzat Chimaev and do I think he's still overrated. As for the pros for Khamzat Chimaev, the guy showed tremendous offensive ability, meaning the guy has good power and he has good boxing, man. He has good hands. And I was really surprised by that because I thought that he was going to look a lot like Khabib out there, you know, striking like a wrestler, being kind of wild like Usman or kind of like Covington. The guy had really technically sound strikes, and that was pretty surprising, I'm not going to lie. Khamzat Chimaev also displayed pretty good power, and I mean he's hitting amongst the hardest in the entire division. I'm not going to get all crazy and say that he hits the hardest because you still got guys like Usman and obviously Gilbert Burns that beg to differ, but the guy shown that his power is legit, man, and he can really knock out anyone in that weight class. As well as giving shots, the guy also shown that he can take a shot. He can be the hammer and he can also be the nail. And that is something that really surprised me as well because the guy cuts a lot of weight, man. He's a pretty big guy and dare I say a weight bully, which we'll get into later. But I'm just saying, man, typically when guys cut a lot of weight, now I'm not saying that as he progresses in his career that it won't eventually get to him. But at this very moment, he's taking shots from Gilbert Burns, who has laid out guys in the 170-pound division. And then there's more of the obvious. Big, strong, great wrestler, great technique, etc., etc. Now we talk about the harsh, honest truths. Now, defensively, Khamzat Chimaev is lacking. He does not move his head. And when I say he does not move his head, I'm talking about he is on Charles Oliveira's level of defense. And that is something that he really needs to fix. You can't just sit here and take shots from guys and expect just to out-tough them when you can't take them down. And that was another point that I was going to make. His wrestling was overplayed. A lot of guys sat and ignored the jiu-jitsu ability of Gilbert Burns. And I was trying to tell you guys, man. Everybody was like, Gilbert Burns' jiu-jitsu is overrated in MMA. Well, it goes to show if you have enough technique to stop a guy like Khamzat Chimaev's takedowns, you are going to give him one heck of a fight. It is proven with these wrestlers, man. They become easier to deal with when you can stop their biggest weapon. Now, hear me out when I say this. Khamzat Chimaev is skilled. Don't get me wrong. But the guy should stay at 170 pounds. If he is going to be champion, and he really has dreams of being champion one day, stay away from that 185-pound division unless you can get an immediate shot at Israel Adesanya. Because Khamzat Chimaev even said that Gilbert Burns felt a lot stronger than what he thought. And that is alarming due to the fact that, you know, there's bigger guys, a lot more bigger guys in the welterweight division than Gilbert Burns. Obviously being Kamaru Usman, but there's also Colby Covington, who has an extensive wrestling background, who may or may not stop the takedowns of Khamzat Chimaev, which leads me to my next point. Khamzat Chimaev doesn't have the best gas tank. Now, is his gas tank bad? I won't say that because he went 3 rounds, but the reason why he stopped attempting takedowns against Gilbert Burns, because he blew himself out. He blew himself out. Once you can compete with this guy on the ground, he will stop shooting so excessively. And he did. He did. After that first round, he stuck to his boxing and his striking. It's because he is a big guy and he relies heavily on his size more than his technique. Now, he is skilled, don't get me wrong, but he's not as skilled as a wrestler or grappler as Khabib or Islam Makhachev, and that is what I was trying to say to guys. A lot of his success is because he can just pick guys up and put them where they're supposed to be, then use his technique, then use his grappling. But once the guys get somewhere where he doesn't want them to be, he literally picks them up and moves them. That's a lot of strength. That's a lot of energy. And whenever you look at these guys with the physicality of like a Kamaru Usman, that is going to display some big red flags, because if you get gassed out when a guy tussles back at you or you start winding yourself, that is not a good look whenever you look at a guy like Usman who carries power for 5 rounds. Now, before we get too crazy here, let's talk about what's next for him. And the UFC wants to book him versus Colby with a 5-round main event on an ABC card. That's really interesting. And I want Khamzat Chimaev's next fight to be a 5-round fight, because I want to see if he can improve on the cardio. If this just is a one-off and this is his first big fight and his first big test in UFC, it was a huge jump in competition. Maybe that's the case, and maybe he will become more prepared against Colby Covington, because he's faced this top level of competition before. Now, if you guys are sitting here thinking, oh, Colby's going to crush him because of the cardio aspect, you also got to realize that it's an entire different fight. Yeah, Colby has the wrestling to stop Khamzat Chimaev and the gas tank to really push him, but Colby also doesn't have Gilbert Burns' jiu-jitsu and capabilities of fighting off his back. If Khamzat Chimaev gets Colby Covington to the back, on his back, it's going to be a completely different scenario than Khamzat Chimaev getting Gilbert Burns to his back. We don't know if Colby can fight that well off his back, but what we do know is that Colby can really push a pace, and if Khamzat Chimaev can't control Colby Covington on the ground, and Colby continues to scramble and get back to his feet, he can really bring the fight to Khamzat Chimaev. Colby doesn't have that type of power, though, to keep Khamzat off of him, but he does have that cardio to really turn it up on him in the 4th and 5th, and that is really going to worry me about Khamzat Chimaev. Is that a winnable fight? Of course. But, you know, it's interesting. Now, as for Usman, that is a completely different fight, and I believe is a harder matchup than the Colby Covington one, because Usman brings a level of physicality, and from what I've seen, Usman is stronger than Khamzat Chimaev. So if Usman can defend against that style of wrestling and stop the takedowns of Khamzat Chimaev and bang it out on the feet, he can gas Khamzat Chimaev out just by simply using his own game plan against him. Usman can also shoot for takedowns, and he may be the one strong enough to get Khamzat Chimaev to the ground. Now, Khamzat Chimaev has skill, and he has dangerous submissions, etc., etc., but it still does bring up an interesting test for Khamzat Chimaev due to the fact that the physicality levels, he is going to meet his match in terms of physicality with Usman. Usman is known as one of the strongest guys in this division and one of the hardest guys to take down. If Usman can stop his takedowns and can really give it to Khamzat Chimaev in the clinch, this is an interesting fight. If Khamzat Chimaev gasses out in front of Usman, however, he is going to get put out cold, because we already know his defensiveness is just not there. But I want to know what you guys think. I'm going to talk about the Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat Chimaev matchup more tomorrow on the podcast. It's been your boy Trippy, and I'm out, man.